and start by changing your mindset. Because we can't just get sober and think that everything is magically going to get better. Like it seemed to me anyway. Well, I would go to these rooms and they would talk and they just got a new car and they got a new house. And I'm like, oh, if I get sober, that's all I got to do to get these things, And it's like, I get sober and none of that happens. And I'm like, this isn't right. This isn't what I perceived it to be.
Hello, and welcome back to Retrieving Sanity with your podcast host Keegan, and this is your podcast for all mental health, addiction, recovery issues, and topics. And today we have a very special guest. His name is Damian Bloss, and he has been through hell, quite literally. So, Damian, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and what Breaking the Silence is all about?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you again for having me on. I appreciate it. And this is actually the start of the Suicide Prevention Awareness and Recovery Month. So I appreciate it. But yeah, so a little bit about me. My name is Damian Bloss. I live in Maryland. Breaking the silence, what it is just that. Like, I lived in, I suffered in silence for so long, because of the stigma around addiction, and I deal with mental health issues as well, and they go hand in hand, so breaking the silence was just that. I finally was like, I need to talk about this, because every other time I tried to get sober and things, I just let it go. I wouldn't tell anybody, because I was basically preparing to never stop. So I didn't have to keep reiterating like, I fell off again, and all that. So, but yeah, breaking the silence is just that. It's holding myself accountable and, spreading awareness.
Okay. So you've been through it yourself though, right? You're not just sitting there toting a torch that you've just found on the side of the road, right?
Oh yeah, no, not at all. I definitely, like you said, been through hell, on the account of my own actions, in this disease of addiction. Growing up though, I didn't have that life or perceived that someone perceived me to be like, oh, I can see he's going to be, an addict or an alcoholic. I grew up in a fairly normal home, and except my parents divorced when I was 8 or 9 years old. That was the only thing, and that didn't really affect me much. I played baseball growing up, and my dad was my coach, so like I saw him all the time, even though I lived with my mom full time. So everything was normal up until that point. Of course, in high school, I would I experimented with drugs and alcohol, but never to excess.
That's normal.
Yeah, exactly. The peer pressure and things like that. It wasn't until I was about 18, almost 19 years old, when I started to self-destruct.
Oh man. Okay.
Yeah.
So whenever you started to quote unquote self-destruct, what was the straw that broke the camel's back? Because normally it's not something that, sometimes it is a big event that just weighs really heavy on someone, and sometimes it's a lifetime of build up that eventually just breaks someone. Which one was it for you?
It was, all of a sudden, pretty much, I had a traumatic experience. So, at that age, a close family member of ours passed away. And it wasn't just that. It was the fact that he died by suicide. And, being that age and, never experiencing that firsthand, my family, nothing like that. And it completely broke me. And, the thing about it too is that he only confided in me with that information, that he wanted to do this. And this was like a buildup of, 6 to 8 months. And he would always say he's going to do it and things like that. And me being that young, he would be like, I'm just joking. Don't tell anybody. I'm just kidding around. So, I took it as that. It like, all right, he's just joking around. Let's get back to normal conversation. But, towards the end there, he would bring it up more and more. And, but it still never clicked. And then he did it. And that was the moment that it completely broke me. You know, I'm sitting here with this information, you know, he could still be here, and, you know, all these what ifs and why didn't I's and, you know, things like that. And, the family, you know, didn't know they weren't equipped to deal with this either. So like, they're trying to figure out, like, did he do it because of you or you know, things like that.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm sitting here with this information, and now I'm definitely not telling anybody because I don't want to be blamed.
Yeah.
You know, so, so, yeah, it broke me.
Yeah, I can totally relate with that. That's some really heavy knowledge to be dealt with at such a young age as well. Just, and how do you go to someone else if you've never been told that that kind of exposure to vulnerable feelings is even okay in the first place, right? Because
Right.
a lot of us, we are just raised to mind ourselves, keep to ourselves, and all will be well. But that's obviously not the case. So whenever your family started to bicker amongst one another, that would definitely be the thing I would have done, is like, all right, I'm not telling y'all what happened, like, because it's obviously my fault, right? But it's not your fault, right? Because it's not your action that actually happened. It's one of those things that it definitely, I would have survivor's guilt. Is that something that you have dealt with over the years?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, why am I here? Why did he do this? Why did he leave me with this information? And, you know, what am I to do? So I turned to the bottle. That's what made me suppress all those emotions, all that guilt. And I held on to that secret for 20 years, you know, and it was hard. And the thing is too, is once I started to suppress all that information and all those emotions, I started to love myself. Like, I was loving who I was becoming, because, you know, growing up, I was very introverted. I was very shy, and, you know, I would make friends, but only if they came to me and things like that. But alcohol let me be this person, and it brought out this person that I had longed for. Like, I always wanted to be that, but I didn't know how to do it. And it was letting me be that person. I started to forget why I was drinking in the first place. Like, I started to forget all those feelings. So I thought it was working. You know, I thought, this is how I'm going to have to live my life for the rest of my life, you know?
Yeah. It sounds just like so many other stories out there. It starts with one act of, I'm going to do this because I need to feel better, or maybe that's the only thing that I know what to do with these hard feelings and stuff, because it suppresses them. It kind of makes me deal with them in a different way that I wasn't taught. And that's one of the big things too, is if you're feeling more social, that's one of the big things, is that you kind of trauma bonded with yourself, I guess, you know?
Yeah.
So whenever you trauma bond with yourself, it's kind of hard to break that habit, because if you love who you are underneath that influence, but at the same time you hate who you are underneath that influence, what do you do with that?
Right. Yeah. And I absolutely did. You know, I loved it for a little while until it stopped. Until I stopped loving myself, I started hating myself. You know, I had run-ins with the law from, you know, alcohol-induced reckless endangerment, and, you know, just few stints in jail. And then I did go to rehab once, and, you know, I was in meetings and doing the counseling, and, you know, it was all court ordered. I did take some information away from that stuff, but I wasn't locked in. I wasn't ready to give up. And that was, you know, I'd say probably 2004, 2005. At that point, when I got that, you know, the getting arrested and things like that, and just being ridiculous with my drinking, but it didn't faze me any. Like, I never hit my rock bottom, and that you would think that, you know, that was it, but I didn't hit my rock bottom until about almost 6 years ago.
Oh man.
Yeah, so it it carried on for so long. And then,
Mm-hmm.
I stopped drinking to have fun. It was no longer fun. It was just to survive. I
Mm-hmm.
had to drink in order to be normal. I had to drink to function. I had to
Yep.
drink to do anything in life. I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't wake up and wait a little while before I had to drink as soon as I woke up, because I didn't feel like myself until I did,
Mm-hmm.
and that was a 24/7. It was basically 24 hours a day, 7 days a week,
Yep.
aside from the times that I would pass out and wake up again and start all over.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm right there with you. Been there, and it sucked. It honestly
Yeah.
really, really sucked. Whenever you wake up and you only feel okay after you have a little bit of alcohol back in you, and then you're like, all right, I feel normal. And then a few hours passes, and you're like, all right, time to hit the bottle again. And then maybe a few hours passes again. And so if you're at work, you have a little bit to go with you. You find a way to get something during lunch break, maybe, and then you find a way to get some on the way home, maybe, and then you stop by the liquor store on the way home, and then yeah, dude, it's a one hell of a cycle, and it sucks because that, like you said, it is very much that's how you operate. Like, did you
Hmm.
eat a whole lot while you were underneath that influence? Because a lot of people don't realize that alcohol is one of the four things that we can get calories from. So you literally run off of alcohol alone.
Yeah, no, and I'm glad you brought that up too, because I would research which, like, alcohol has the most carbs. How can I
Mm.
take food out of my equation and
Ooh.
just stick with alcohol, because I was doing it so much. Like you said too, and I was doing it at work,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know how I was able to function. People started noticing at work, so
Yep.
I'm replacing actual food with
Mm-hmm.
alcohol. I would eat a little bit just so I could soak up some of it so I could drink more. That's the only reason why I did it.
Yeah.
And it was like, and it was so crazy because, you know, even now, being sober, my sobriety
Mm-hmm.
date is February 13th, 2020.
Nice.
And thank you.
Uh-huh.
Um, even even now, like, I'll get those hunger pains when I'm getting kind of hungry, and
Mm-hmm.
like it'll take me back, and it scares the crap out of me too,
Mm.
because it starts making me think, like, I remember this feeling. Like,
Mm-hmm.
even after all this time, I remember this feeling, what I
Yeah.
used to do, and it kind of freaks me out a little bit. But I eat food now, so
Yeah, that's good. I'm really
yeah.
glad that you got back to eating food. And I know for myself, the first actual meal that I had whenever I was in rehab, I remember it because I was like, I haven't eaten anything like this in a good hot minute, and I was like, it blew me away because I was like, how was I missing this whole time? But I was just in such a hole that food didn't matter, and it was expensive, right? It would just get in the way of my alcohol consumption in the first place. So
Yeah.
I'm kind of surprised you sat there and researched like which ones has the most carbs and stuff, so you can just run off of it. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it was crazy. Like, like that's what it made me do. And I've
Uh,
never been so locked in at that point in my life. I've never been so locked in on something
mm-hmm.
where I'm like, I felt like, it's some sort of scientist. Like, I'm researching all this stuff, and I'm like, trying to. It's wild
Yeah.
what this disease will do, and have
Mm-hmm.
you do, and make you
Yeah.
feel like it's for the best thing in humanity
Mm-hmm.
for me to pick up. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That would be the best thing for the entire human race, would be for me to pick up. And that's what this disease does to you too. It makes
Mm-hmm.
you act so much out of character, to where
Mm-hmm.
you have those irrational thoughts that you completely think are rational.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, and then if you're like me, whenever you did try to get sober, sometimes you'd sit there and be like, all right, well, I was doing beer for a little bit, so I'm going to switch over to wine. No, okay, not the wine. Okay, now it's only going to be clear alcohol. Like, nope, okay,
Mm.
so we're going to move over to the spirits or something. And like, I would always come up with the weirdest routines or something, like, okay, only on the weekends or this or that. And none of those ever worked. It always devolved back into the whole everyday all the time. And it sucked. Whenever you mentioned it being a disease, a lot of people like to say that it's not, or some
Mm.
people like to say that it's maybe a disease, but not in the traditional way that we think of a disease. So what's your take on it?
Sure. Yeah. My take on that part is like, no, it's not a disease. Like, you can't compare it to cancer and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a disease because it tells me every single day that I'm still here. I'm
Mm-hmm.
just waiting for you to slip up. And all I need to do is put myself in a moment that reminds me, that is so overpowering, and reminds me that this feeling, I
Mm-hmm.
know how to get rid of this feeling. And it completely takes over your natural instinct, which is
Yeah.
to do other things, to get your mind off of it.
Mm-hmm.
It completely takes control and says, I know how to get rid of this. Just one. All you need is one, and I can help you.
Mm-hmm.
And take yourself to the liquor store, pick up something, and drink it. And I promise you, you'll feel better. And, you know, when it does, obviously, I can, if I have one, I'm having 20. So, you know, that is my take on how it is a disease for me, is that it's never going to be gone. I'm always going to live with this, and I'm always going to have that urge no
Mm-hmm.
matter what happens.
Mm-hmm.
It's just now I have the tools and I have the resources and things to combat that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so that is like the tools and resources. I use that as my medicine to help me fight this disease that I'm
Yeah.
always going to live with.
Yeah, and I think that's an important aspect too. And that's one of the things is that I've always described alcoholism or addiction as the disease of choice, because it starts with, we definitely had the choice to use or drink in the first place. Then we had the choice to do it again, or third, or fourth, so on and so forth. But we lose that choice at somewhere along the way. It could be any number of things. And then at some point, it's like, hey, I'm stuck in this cycle and I can't get out. And no matter what I do, I find myself going back towards it willingly. And so it takes this huge amount of willpower to make that other choice. So it's also a paradox of sorts, because getting in it also requires the same kind of thing that it took to get out. Whenever we talk about it being lifelong, though, too, we do have to worry about maybe developing other addictions as we get out of the main addiction, don't we? Did you have to deal with any of that?
I actually did not. Like, alcohol was my main thing.
Mm-hmm.
I never mixed, you know, other illicit drugs or anything like that. You know, for me, even if I had, and you know, I would stay abstinent from everything.
Mm-hmm.
I know there are others who, you know, say they are an alcoholic, but you know, they'll pick up some marijuana or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. And I don't shame anybody that does that.
Yeah.
You know, so for me, the only other thing that I had to try to quit, or you know, kick a habit, was you know, cigarettes.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, that was a pretty tough one for me.
Yeah.
Um, you know,
Dig-
trying to kick that as well, you know, because,
Yeah.
you know, just like with alcohol, especially alcohol, it's so
Mm-hmm.
socially acceptable. Even smoking cigarettes is really socially acceptable,
Yep.
um, and hard to put down as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I had to do that as well.
Oh man, so you definitely did almost the trifecta, you know, just the alcohol, the nicotine, and you're now going full sober, or straight edge, as some people like to say, which is really awesome,
Yeah.
because it's one of those things that we have different terms in sobriety. We have clean, sober, and so on and so forth, and people like to have different milestones for different things. And like you said, I don't judge anyone on their recovery journey so long as they're actively working on bettering themselves.
Yeah.
Sometimes people have 5 different addictions and they need to work on one at a time. And sometimes
Yeah.
while they're working on one will pick up a little bit more and go out of control, and then they're finding themselves kind of in that same loop. But that's the thing, is that they have their journey to go on. It's not my place to tell them where they need to go. But you had also
Absolutely.
said the tools that you use now help with the disease and stuff. So essentially, the disease is also more of a symptom, would you say, for you? Or was it something that was the disease was the disease itself, not some underlying cause.
I kind of look at it like, when I look back at it, I kind of look at it being my solution, to all my problems, where alcohol didn't really become a problem in that moment. It was always a solution to my problem. So if I had an issue, I would drink, and then that would solve the problem. So I never really looked at it like that, like you're saying, as a symptom. I always look at it now. For me, it was the solution, and not to say it was right, but it was the solution at the time for my problems. So, with the tools that I use is basically my support system. I grew my support system tremendously and have like-minded individuals to help me stay on track. But yeah, when you go back to what you were saying, is that I look at it as pretty much my solution.
Yeah, alcohol was definitely the solution for me and all my problems. But whenever I was trying to deal with my alcoholism, the thing is that I thought the alcohol was the problem I was dealing with, and whatever really was the things underneath. So
I get what you're saying now.
Yeah. So what you were talking about was your support system and stuff. It has me curious. Did you do a whole bunch of AA or anything like that? Or are you one of the traditional people, if you will? Or are you someone that's kind of blazing their own trail?
Yeah, so a little bit of everything, to be honest with you. Okay. I did do AA and start by changing your mindset. Because we can't just get sober and think that everything is magically going to get better. Like it seemed to me anyway. Well, I would go to these rooms and they would talk, and they just got a new car and they got a new house. And I'm like, oh, if I get sober, that's all I got to do to get these things, And it's like, I get sober and none of that happens. And I'm like, this isn't right. This isn't what I perceived it to be. So I dug into working on myself, changing my mindset from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset, and changing my outlook on life in general. And, being a more positive person. It's not always going to be sunshine and rainbows every day, but you can find a positive in every single negative situation. You just got to look harder sometimes. But yeah, that's how I let them know, like, take all this and just, do it your way. But here are the tools.
Yeah. And one of the things that I heard you say is essentially the concept of yin and yang. There's going to be good things in the bad. But I think to really highlight that is to also let people know that there's going to be some bad things in the good too. And I think that whenever we're trying to get into early recovery, a lot of us sit there with a lot of shame and guilt over the things that we've done or things like that. And we have to recognize that even in recovery, we're not perfect people. And like it says in AA, we are not saints. And a lot of people don't really sit there and understand that, because some people think that we have to be perfect in recovery. And you're saying, no, there's not a way to do it besides just not picking up again, not picking up a bottle, not picking up your substance of choice. And it's easily said, but it can be really difficult to actually do. So what's one of your suggestions to people that want to stop first, but they don't know how?
Reaching out is, as hard as it is. Stigma surrounds it, and judgments, and we all think that if we say something about it, that people are going to look at us different. And what helped me a lot is when I finally hit that rock bottom, and I knew that I could not do this anymore. Just saying, forget it. Who cares what this person thinks? I am who I am. This disease does not define who I am. I'm still Damien on the inside. I know who I want to be. And, I was just able to say, forget it. Let them talk. And, I am not being a voice for that person. I want to be a voice for the person that was like me, who was silent, who stayed to himself, who was so worried about what other people thought about me. And, when it comes to this, and just do this for myself. I couldn't do it for anybody else. And, a lot of people would say, why don't you do it for your kids or for your wife or for this and for that? And, none of that worked because, my addiction would not let me care about anybody else but myself. So in recovery, I also had to care about myself first. And in order for me to love somebody else, I had to get myself better. And, so for that person, it is very hard. It's easy for me to just say, yeah, just don't forget about, or just say, forget what other people think about you. It's so very hard. But I feel like we know when we're ready to give it up. And, it took me a while to get to that point too. But this other world, so to speak, is so much more beautiful than the world I was living in, and I couldn't see it.
Yeah, that's for sure. And we don't realize the kind of hell that we're putting ourselves through in the moment. But one of the things that you have said a couple of times real quick is rock bottom. And you had just mentioned that once we're ready, we're ready. And you're damn right, because I don't know about you, but I don't think I've met anyone that is sober with at least a year or more and said, oh, this is my first time trying to get sober. Everyone else I know is like, oh no, I would try this to get sober for a little bit. I would try this. I decided enough was enough, and then everything got better real quick, and then I decided to go back to it or something like that. But there is definitely that rock bottom. It's that tipping point of sorts, and it's kind of like, if I go over that ledge again, I'm not coming back. So what was your absolute rock bottom like? Was there a specific moment that really just clicked, or did you have one of those I think it's Bill Wilson, right, moments where he's in the hospital and he had that eureka moment?
Right. No. So with me, my rock bottom came, it was when I now wanted to take my own life. It was to a point to where my addiction was telling me that you've been to jail, you've been to rehab, you've done the counseling, you've done the meetings, you've done all this, and it's still not working. The only way you're going to get out of this is if you take yourself out, and it was the words, the voice, it's so clear to me that that's what I needed to do. And I was on the verge of it. And, in my mind, I didn't want to do it, but, I did because that was the only way I was going to get out. So I'm in the process of texting my wife to, tell her that she's going to have to pick up the kids today. And, in the process of me texting her, my vision is blurred and, everything is just going wrong. I accidentally called this pastor in my phone, and I had his number because my dad had given it to me a while back, trying to get me to get sober at that point, because he was at his wit's end. He wasn't sure what to do. He just gave me this guy's number. And I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll call him. I never did until that day by accident. And, the phone's ringing. I'm staring at it. I'm froze because I don't know what to do. I can't hang up. If I do, he's going to call back. So he eventually answers, and I'm like, just completely broke down to him. That was the point where I said, I don't care who knows, somebody's got to help me here, and just let it all out. And he was like, I need you to meet me at the coffee shop up the street. And he met me, and we sat and we talked, and he asked me to pray. And I was like, I've never prayed before in my life. My relationship with God was that he existed, and that was it. Because I was always like, why are you doing this to me? Why me? That kind of thing. And he had me do that, and it was like a weight was lifted off of me. I came home that day, still told my wife that she has to pick up the kids, but it was because I'm checking. I was checking myself into rehab. Like you were talking about too, where we always, we're gonna do it, and then something happens and we just go back to it and we pick up again. On my way to rehab, I had gotten sober before I went to rehab, because when I called them, they said, we can get you in right now if you need to detox. And, me still thinking that I can do this on my own. Nah,
Oh
give
no.
me a couple days.
Oh
Um,
no. Oh no, that's a bad
and
idea.
yeah, yeah. Um, and she was like, I can get you in 5 days if you don't need a detox. I'm like, all right, good. Set me up for that. So I did take those next few days, and I got sober on my own, which was the worst decision that I could have made, because I should have been under medical supervision. It was bad. I didn't have to go to the hospital, but it was bad, and I should have.
Yeah.
But the 5th day comes. I'm a day out of withdrawal. I'm feeling really good. Like my energy is up, and I'm just ready. I'm like, I can do this on my own. I just did it for 4 days. I feel so good. On the way to the rehab,
Oh no.
I'm like, how do I get out of this? Maybe the directions to this place isn't right, and we'll get lost, or all these thoughts going through my mind. Jump out of this car and just head off into the woods, and come back a couple days later and be like, I'm all right.
Yeah.
No, but that is the irrational thoughts that were popping up, that making me think that that's what I should do. I did not do that. My wife drove me. We made it to the rehab, and it was the best decision.
Yeah. That's awesome. I love that story for a few reasons, and one of them is because that synchronicity and that accident of just calling the pastor and being able to break down and open up about something like that. Then there's the whole element of essentially just because you got sober doesn't mean that's the end of it, right? Just because you got sober doesn't mean that the recovery road has ended, or it doesn't mean that it's all pink cloud after that, because I got sober for 4 days. Like, yeah, it's okay. Like, but that's the thing, is that getting that kind of sober after drinking for however long is really, really dangerous. Like, I had to get my medical detox. My liver gave out on me. If it wasn't for a medical supervision, I'd be dead, So I really do want listeners to know that your story is not the best in regards to that. Like, if they offer assistance with detox, take it. Like,
absolutely,
it's worth it for sure. Because what was the hardest part about the actual detox for you in that regard? Because that is one of the battles that a lot of people face, is they're afraid of the detox itself, because it's hard to go through. How did you make it through?
Yeah, it was very hard. The shakes and the sickness, and always just nastiness, hallucinations, and I remember my vision was legitimately blurred. I could not, it always felt like something was in my eye. And it was so blurred I couldn't really see, and I'm hallucinating, and I can't sleep, and I can't eat anything, I can't drink anything, because I can't keep it down. And it was such a horrible experience. And you're right, and nobody should go through that without medical clearance. Like I said, I should have gone, and I was just that stubborn. I was afraid, going back through it. I was afraid to get sober. I was afraid to know who I am without, drinking. I was afraid of all of that, and I don't know what made me think, like, hey, I'll just see you in a couple days, when they told me. But I mean, the withdrawal, it was horrible.
And you just mentioned something again that I think a lot of people really deal with, and they don't realize that they're dealing with it, and that's the identity loss of quitting drinking or quitting any substance that they're actively using, because either it be used to mask pain, to mask trauma, whether it be used to build oneself up, to be someone that they're not, build confidence, so on and so forth. Whenever they take that element away, they're afraid that they lose that part of them, right? So how would you tell someone that, no, that is you, it's just you don't need that substance in that moment,
Yeah, and that's a hard one too, because you have to, when you go through recovery, way after, the rehab stay and things
Mm-hmm.
like that, you have to find out who you are. And the only way to do that is by completely getting to the root of what made you do this in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
I was not I was totally afraid of who I was. It's not easy to tell somebody like you're gonna be better. I promise you're gonna be better,
Mm-hmm.
because there's no way for that person to believe you. It really starts with getting to unlearning everything that you had learned before while using.
Mm.
And that's the hardest part, is trying
Uh-huh.
to, because you're essentially a new person once you hit recovery. You
Mm.
are essentially a new person, because that the old way of thinking, the old way of doing things
Mm-hmm.
has to be completely overhauled.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that is the hardest part. And that's why it was very important for me to work with a therapist,
Mm-hmm.
because I know I couldn't have done that on my own, try to figure out who I really am. If anybody was thinking how could they do that, I really suggest someone, a professional, a therapist, a counselor,
Mm-hmm.
something like that.
Yeah, for sure. And I love that you're talking about uh, all of that, because in death we are made new, right? And
Mhm.
that's kind of the weird thing, is that a lot of people think that recovery is life, and while that is the case, it is also beginning death, because it is a death of our old self. And
Yeah.
again, that comes with fear, that comes with fear of the unknown, and a lot of people sitting there going, I don't know what to do. So you're
Hmm.
sitting here able to offer people that peace of mind and stuff like that. And one of the things that you also mentioned before too was your relationship with a higher power. And you didn't necessarily have one before, and it kind of helped change everything. And but you also are sitting there taking the therapy at the same time. You're not sitting there leaning only into church or only
Mm.
into this. You're sitting there, you're making it really well rounded, so that you are figuring out who you want to be, right? You're not
Yeah.
just sitting there going like, all right, this sounds good, I'm gonna follow that yellow brick road, right?
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. Because once someone tells you to do something and you just
Mm-hmm.
do that, that's exactly what you do. Is you're like, all right, I'm just going to stick with this then, and see what that helps,
Mm-hmm.
or where that takes me. Where does that road take me? A lot of
Yeah.
people used to say, you should just pray this away.
Mm-hmm.
And you know and that is not that praying. Yes,
Yeah,
pray
yeah.
to whoever your higher power is, definitely, but don't
Uh-huh.
just do that.
No.
A lot of people would tell me, they were in churches and things like that. All you need to do is pray this away, and no, that's not how this works.
No.
um uh so I remember too, religion used to turn me away from wanting to go to the rooms and things,
Mm-hmm.
because I always felt, and they could say higher power, they could say it doesn't have to be God.
Mm-hmm.
It's in a church, and you know in the steps it has God multiple times and things like
Mm-hmm.
that, and I'm like, we pray at the end. and,
Mm-hmm.
and so it turned me off a lot about that. And so, like, even in my mentoring and things like that, like, I don't lead with that. I don't push that down anyone's throat either.
Yeah.
um you know come when you're ready, because I didn't
Mm-hmm.
come until I was.
Yeah, and that's a really good way to put it too, because a lot of people will sit there and, like myself and you, it sounds like, avoided getting help sooner because the religion aspect. It was like,
Yeah.
well, I'm not going, and you're saying if I don't do this, then I'm not going to get better, and I want to get better, but I don't want to do that. So yeah, I'm not getting better, I guess, you know. So, and
Yeah.
it kind of goes in line with step one and everything, because I'm only saying that because whenever I was getting sober or trying to, I was like, yeah, I did step one. I admitted I was an alcoholic. Okay, well then guess what? You have to do the other steps if you want to go forward. You can't just sit there and say, yeah, I got a problem, that's it. Problem solved. That'd be the same thing as trying to pray it away. Just sitting there saying like, I'm going to sit there and do something about it. I'm going to sit there and just whine, essentially, right? And that was one of the
Yeah.
things I heard someone say in a room once was, prayer without action is just a complaint. And I was like, yeah, that sounds about right. So it kind of made me think different about a lot of different things like that too. And you're also sitting there saying that people can sit there and you're letting people choose their higher power, right? Because not everyone's higher power is the same. Even if
Yeah.
you're in the same sect or whatever, your higher power may not line up with someone else's perceived qualities of your higher power, you know?
Mm.
Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah. I definitely don't. I wouldn't want that done to me. And if and it was done to me quite a bit. And I was like, I'm just not going to associate myself with you then if you're going to try to force this on me. And that's the last thing I want to do, especially trying to help others get sober. I don't want to push them away. So, it doesn't matter your affiliation, just, I do believe that we need to think of and believe in something bigger than ourselves, because I don't think that us alone can do this. And that other thing could be anything imaginable. It doesn't have to be, that higher power. It could be anything, but as long as you believe in something bigger than yourself, because you're going to need all the help you can get. And, I was telling them, like, you'll never know if that thing is what's going to help you or not. So you have nothing really to lose. So if you just believe in something bigger than yourself, it can only help you. It can't hurt you.
Yeah. And I remember hearing someone say GOD, group of drunks, and good orderly discipline. And there's some other ones that I've heard before, but that's the thing. Like you said, it just has to be something besides yourself that you're putting into. But the thing is too, is that you have to do it for yourself too. You can't necessarily sit there and go and do it, like you said, for your family, because if it would have worked, you wouldn't be in this position right now, right?
Yeah.
So one of my questions is, with your years in active addiction, you had to have a family during that time, and they had to be with you through the whole thing. So, and they're still all one whole unit, right?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It really is. I feel blessed in that way. My wife pretty much took the brunt of it. We've been together 15 years and married 13. So
nice.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And that was like the peak of my addiction at that point. Of course my parents and things, they had to deal with it, but my wife, because she was there 24/7, dealing with that. And I am very blessed that she's still here, helping me, and she helps me with my Breaking the Silence group. She's done wellness, family wellness meetings and things like that. And just trying to figure out how to deal with me in recovery and and how, or the things that led up to my addiction and things like that. So she went through her own, and she didn't have to do that. I didn't ask her to do it. She just did it, which was super, super cool on her end. And I that is something that doesn't happen all the time either, where the spouses stay. I have a number of friends who were in active addiction, or people that I knew came out of rehab and lost their spouses and things. And it's not easy. When we're in active addiction, we think it's only happening to us, when in reality it's happening to our spouses, our kids, our parents. Anybody that's in our way is going to be affected by this. And it's such a blessing that she sticks with it. I use her as my confidant. I confide in her, and I talk to her all the time, and I don't feel judged when I talk to her.
Ooh, and that's a huge important aspect, is not feeling judged whenever you speak to someone about things that are so close to you, and especially to someone that is so close to you. You have to feel that. And I'm just honestly super impressed and just like inspired by her resilience and sticking by your side and doing those things with you and for you, because that's true love right there, and that does
Yeah.
take a lot of effort. So one of my questions is, I did think I saw it on the Podmatch profile, but do you think that we could have y'all back on as a duo so that we can get both sides of y'all's story at the same time?
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely, man.
Yeah. That'd be
Yeah.
awesome. Because, like you said, our addiction makes us think that it's literally woe is me and why is the world
Mm.
doing all this to me? And then in recovery, we're kind of sitting there and it's like, oh, yeah, never mind. I messed up a lot. And that's the thing, is that we have to make sure that our recovery doesn't only affect us. We have to
Mm.
make sure that our recovery extends to those that are, first of all, affected by our past and then affected by future actions going forward, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Because, it's much more than just an I'm sorry or I
Yeah.
apologize. It's so much more than that. And, that was my way of, essentially getting me off the hook, was me
Mm-hmm.
saying, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that. I didn't mean to act that way. I'm not going
Mm-hmm.
to do that again. Um, and it wasn't until I started, or I stopped saying
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry and started showing
Mm-hmm.
exactly what I'm doing in my recovery, how I'm actually taking it seriously, and
Yeah.
how it is shaping me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that is the biggest apology that anyone who's been affected by our addiction can have. That is the biggest thing.
Yeah, for sure. So
Yeah.
you kind of have to build up new habits, right? To kind of
Mm.
help reinforce this new mindset for yourself. So, real quick, what is one habit that you have changed that makes you who you are today?
Uh, I do a lot more things around the house.
Ooh.
I pick projects to do
Uh-huh.
in my house just so I can stay busy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I like to play. I like activities, so like I like to play golf and things like that. So, um, but mostly doing things around the house because it keeps me busy.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, I had a lot of things that I had to redo because I would do them when I was drunk, and they're all off level and things like that. So I had to redo a bunch of stuff around the house because of that. Um, so, so yeah,
Sorry, not trying to laugh too much at that, but that's pretty funny. I mean, because that
yeah,
would be something I would have done.
right.
So, uh, it really shows that you're quick and, well, not necessarily quick, but you are being very thorough. You're sitting there saying, look, this is something that I did in the moment, so I can recognize that it's not good. And that's pretty cool too at the same time, right? Because it's a physical representation of what you've been through, what you're doing, and you're able to literally go back and fix some mistakes. And I think that that's a pretty cool symbology right there. And
Yeah.
I think that it really does kind of highlight everything that you're doing. But real quick, I did forget to ask you earlier on in the episode, but where can people find you if they're looking to get some help with all of this?
Yeah, sure. You can find us on Facebook, Breaking the Silence, on Instagram as well, Breaking the Silence. I have a link tree that is tagged to both of those,
Okay.
and my link tree has a direct email to me. So if you want to reach out without, you want to do it privately, that's completely fine. Join our groups. You can see our meetings. They're virtual as well. So if you're not in Maryland, you can still join. And
Okay.
there's a link to my book as well in that link tree.
Sweet. My biggest question was really going to be, what's with all the comics on the background?
Ah, okay. Yeah. So I love collecting comics and Funko Pops, although I've gotten out of the Funkos now, but comics
Mm-hmm.
I'm really into. And like I got a wall over here too that you can't see.
Mm-hmm.
It's full of The Walking Dead. Like I have all the Walking Dead
Ooh.
comics. And over here is a little mini arcade and then my sports memorabilia over here. But yeah, those comics, what's funny about that? I'm the only
Mm-hmm.
one that really enjoys them in my house. So I'll
Ah.
just change them up every once in a while just
Uh-huh.
because just because I'm a nerd like that.
Yeah. It's all about the feng shui, Maybe
Yeah.
some comic characters or heroes are fitting your mood more so than others. So, Damien, I just got to say thank you for being on the show, and I thank you for everything that you do for everyone out there dealing with their sobriety, struggling with their recovery, and everything along those lines, because it's people like you that are going to help make this world a better place, one conversation at a time, you know?
Absolutely. And thank you as well for having me on. I really do appreciate it. I love what you're doing with Retrieving Sanity, and just having this platform to be able to talk about mental health and addiction. I think it's what we all need in the world as right now. And you're a fabulous host, dude. I've loved being on here. Very knowledgeable, and congrats on your journey as well.
No, well, thank you very much, sir. I really appreciate the kind words. And it was 5 years for you, correct? Are you going on 6? Did you just hit 5?
I hit 5 on February 13th, so I'm in the middle on 5.5, or yeah, about 5.5.
Yeah, that's right, because my cousin's birthday is Valentine's, and him and I are exactly 6 months apart. So yeah, you're definitely over the half mark now. So
okay. Yeah, actually, yeah, because today's the 1st. Yep.
Yep. And thank you for reminding me that today was National Recovery Month and Suicide Awareness Month. So I believe people can still dial the 988 phone line. Is that still active?
That is correct, yes.
Okay.
I'd have to make sure, because I know there was something with, I saw something with Canada and the US, and Canada's is still up and running.
The
they were
Trevor
saying
Project.
Yeah. So and I want to say 988 is still active, last I saw, but again, I did see rumors that it wasn't, so I'd have to double check. But I want to say I'm 99% sure that it's still active. There is some way of getting in contact. So
yeah.
You're not alone. Definitely, if you're having that thought, please reach out.
Yeah, for sure. And if they won't answer, then reach out to someone that you do know, because hopefully they'll be able to help you out as well.
Absolutely.
So everyone out there, thank you for listening to Retrieving Sanity on WDJY 99.1 FM. This has been Keegan, and this has been Damien. So make sure to check him out over at Breaking the Silence, and just keep on. I dropped a rock. Damn it. So with that being said, we'll see y'all next time. Shalom.